I sit in a box, and you sit in one too. It's a breathing box that talks all day long. It tells me how I feel, the things that I want, and it gives all sorts of opinions about everyone that I see. It's an unforgiving box with bricks for walls. Its name is mindset, and it tells me I am this or I am that. I do not fight it, because how could I move it? It is what it is. I feel what I feel. It shows me the stains on my hands, and I know they are not meant to be this way. But that's okay. I've learned to sit with these feelings, and I know how to keep them inside. And then one day, a friend came along and put a crack in my box. How strange! In an instant, I felt all sorts of things. From this crack, a wondrous light came rushing in. It made me feel both warm and welcome, while also illuminated my shame. I felt vulnerable, exposed, and as see-through as glass. But then, from the crashing of the waves from every direction, I heard the voice of another. Through the eyes of my friend, this voice spoke to me, and he spoke in a very different way. Isaiah 41:13 tells us, "For I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, and I say to you, do not be afraid. I am with you, and I am here to help you." And in that moment, I felt a perfect peace. Jesus was not shaken by my sin. He didn't flinch or shudder. Instead, he saw right through it to the person within. With time, as I began to listen instead to this voice, my box began to change. Rigid walls softened, and with this flexibility, made room for new things. The first of which has been a clarity as to notice the direction and the impact of my attention. Simply where my thoughts were resting and where my thoughts were leading me. I noticed my anger, my aggressiveness, and my complaints in a new light compared to this new light. And quite frankly, it left me silent. This clarity has been a training of the mind to discern what I should and what I should not allow into my box. Through this experience, I learned something. God's work in us is to open us up and to fill that space with himself, his presence, his thoughts, and his peace. We have this whole life that we consider our own. We've grown into it, we've shaped it, and we've spoken for it. And then God tells us that it all really belongs to him. We know from Galatians 2:20 that when you are saved, Christ comes and lives within us. It says, "My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." Okay, but what does this mean for our lives? Well, does Jesus have a say in your decisions? As you make them, are you consulting him? Does he agree with the way that you spend the majority of your time? When you speak, do the people around you hear your voice, or do they hear Jesus? During his time on earth, Jesus was about his Father's business, and I can only imagine if he were to live in us, we would be about this business as well. You see, through Jesus Christ, we are connected directly to the Father. And that is an enormous responsibility, while also being a beautiful and breathtaking breakthrough. So I suppose, as the hands and feet of Christ, we must come to accept a few responsibilities. The responsibility to others, Christians and unbelievers alike, a responsibility to your inner man, What do your decisions look like when your emotions and your desires conflict with each other? And finally, a responsibility to your and to mankind's real purpose. C.S. Lewis puts it best when he describes these responsibilities as a fleet of ships. First, if the ships keep knocking into each other, they would be damaged in no time. Second, each individual ship must be seaworthy, and it must have good engines about her. And third, we must consider the direction that the fleet is trying to go. It does not matter how harmoniously we sail if we were meant to reach New York and we ended up in Calcutta. Additionally, we must consider if these ships are our own property. He says, does it not make a great difference if I am, so to speak, the landlord of my own mind and body, or only a tenant responsible to the real landlord? If somebody else made me for his own purposes, I should have a lot of duties that I would not have if I simply belonged to myself. He goes on to say, if we are to think about morality, we must think of all three departments: relations between man and man, things inside each man, and relations between man and the power that made him. This process begins with the gift of discernment. Stand the root of your hearts. This life grows a thick shell around our hearts, and God wants to break through this calloused and rough exterior to the vulnerable so that his light may shine on it and through it. This work occurs through the shifting of our pre-programmed mindsets, transforming the way that we see ourselves. I am learning to paint flowers on my box. Pinks, purples, yellows, and golds. Notice your own box. What is your mind producing? Where are your emotions leading you? And what do you want to grow on your box?